Hello,
Are we ready?
everybody. My name is Tammy,
And I'm Jen.
and they
And I'm
call us Woo. And this is Angie.
ready to jump on in.
So, Angie, thank you for coming and joining us today. I've talked a little bit on a few previous episodes about the amazing things that you do. And our first question for today is actually, what brought you over to the Woo side? When did you come to the Woo side?
Ooh, I've always been woo, but it was really 2020. Like a lot of individuals, like the pandemic, life events kind of blew the top off of everything I thought I knew and really started to question things. I was in healthcare and just saw a lot happen within that in the world and really started to dive more into spirituality and learning all the things that I wanted to learn and reading all the books, taking all kinds of classes. So it was really a very powerful time.
That's awesome. Well, I mentioned probably in almost all the podcasts we've done so far about hypnosis and the really cool things that you do with hypnosis and working with people on a different level. Do you want to just kind of introduce yourself and what it is that you do now?
Yeah, so I'm Angie Kircher. I own AK Hypnosis and Consulting based in Woodbury, and I'm a mindset coach and hypnotherapist. So I help heart-centered high achievers to break free from the limitations of procrastination, fears, imposter syndrome, kind of the self-limiting stories that people have, and step into their full potential because we all have this untapped potential, I believe, and within the subconscious mind, we can really harness that power to set ourselves free. And it's been such a phenomenal and fun journey.
That's awesome.
Wait, so you mentioned both mindset work and hypnotherapy in there. Can you tell us a little bit about like what the difference is and
Yeah.
how you work with people on that?
Yes. So there are different ways that folks do hypnotherapy. I really have found the best long-term benefit for people by approaching it with both the conscious mind, which is like us sitting here talking now, and then the subconscious mind, which is all of the programming and all of the kind of under the surface experiences we've had that shape how we view the world. So when I say mindset work, it's really tackling both the conscious mind so that you have the tools when things come up to handle them on the conscious level, but then the subconscious mind so that you can rewire the reasons why you have triggers or respond the way you do, or perhaps the limiting beliefs that have kept you stuck. So I like to really fuse both of those to give people the tools they need to have the most powerful impact going forward, also so that they don't have to work with me forever. We do tend to work 6 or 12 sessions together, and beyond that they have all the tools they need for anything that comes up in life, which is a really powerful thing.
So how do people know like if you have something that's going on subconsciously and it's holding you back, you don't always know that that's there because it's subconscious. How do people
Right.
know that that's something that they need to work on?
Yeah, great point. So people tend to come to me as unfortunately kind of a last resort, right? You hear hypnotherapy and some people have stories about it. There's a lot of amazing things about it. But people tend to come to hypnotherapy when they've tried other things that haven't worked. And I intend to shift the narrative on that and really empower people. And it's the people that are like, gosh, I am achieving all these awesome things, but something is in my way. I don't know what it is. And it tends to be kind of the lifelong learners who are always striving for more, but then like hit this resistance within and don't know what it is. A lot of people that I see, though, come to me for smoking cessation, for weight management, for kind of the typical things you hear a hypnotherapist work on. And so there are a lot of categories it can cover. And again, people tend to be curious about, well, I've heard cool things, or hey, my dad quit smoking back in the 80s from hypnotherapy, so I want to try it too because I've got this issue. And so I really want to make it mainstream that people use it for confidence and really just up leveling in life, right? You're already a high achiever, you're already doing great things, but you want to do even better. And the way to do that is through the subconscious mind because that's truly where all of our limitations are.
Yeah. So you're not limited to making people cluck like chickens or doing things like that. I mean, we've all heard
Exactly.
it.
Exactly.
And I know we've
Right.
talked
Yeah.
about it before. That's what
Mhm.
people think of when they think
Yeah.
hypnotherapy. They're like, oh, she's going to make me cluck like a chicken or
Yeah.
make monkey noises. And there's so much more. Like
Mhm.
that's
Right.
entertainment stuff. It's not
Yep.
just for entertainment anymore. Like it's just not.
Correct. It is truly in my opinion and from my experience, both receiving it and then using it with clients, obviously, it's the secret weapon to attaining whatever you want in this life. Like I firmly believe that we all have the capacity to do incredible things. We just need the tools to get out of our own way. And that's it. I mean, the trick is in the subconscious mind because it operates 95% of everything we do in the day. It's all habituated patterns. So when you woke up this morning, you probably had a very similar morning routine that you always have, right? You get up, maybe you get coffee, you go to the bathroom, go back to your room, read a book, whatever you do, right? It's probably very much the same. And we don't question that because it's just a habit. It's a way of kind of shortcutting, the processes of the day so you don't have to learn how to do everything. And like that, we also habituate our negative thought patterns and we don't realize it. We habituate maybe our mindless eating at night and we don't realize that we've done that. We have a trigger that sets into motion a way of being and we just act upon it without even giving it a second thought. And so the subconscious mind operates and does so much. And on top of that, we have somewhere, what did I read? I think it's like 30 or 45,000 thoughts a day, like an astronomical amount of thoughts per day. And we don't have awareness of even the thoughts that we have, which is pretty profound.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Yeah, I know. When we connected, it was kind of interesting because I really didn't know anything about hypnosis other than, the people that get on stage or whatever. And the reason I ended up doing it is just it made so much sense when you explained it and you speak with such like passion about helping people. And the way you do it, I think, is really interesting. Like, I think you go on a much deeper level than just the suggestive thought. You do a lot deeper work than that, which for me personally was very profound. Can you explain that a little more, like the type of work that you like to do?
Yeah, so everybody is different. So when I work with clients, it really is looking at their goals. And so no sessions are the same with any of my clients because they all have different goals. And there are different ways of doing hypnotherapy. One, as you said, is the suggestive. So where you're kind of just there and I'm giving you positive suggestions. That's great and can be helpful, but it doesn't always get to the root cause of why we respond in the way we do. And although we don't need to always trudge ourselves through the mud of the past, sometimes it's helpful to go back and kind of understand where those beliefs started to then be able to gather a new interpretation of that event because it doesn't matter what happened. So it could be an event that was traumatic, but we interpret it as not a bad thing and it doesn't affect us. But we can have an event that was actually really kind of a non-issue. A lot of my clients, a lot of the trauma actually is their sibling being born. They were the older sibling, baby came, and suddenly they had this like traumatic event experiencing abandonment and all these things that as a parent myself, I'm like, oh boy, like it's such a normal life event, but to a 2-year-old's mind, it's a very traumatic event. And that in some clients' cases has had a significant effect on a very subconscious level on how they seek comfort, how they seek safety. And to a 2-year-old mind, you don't 2-year-olds don't rationalize. They can't logic what's happening. They just know that what they're experiencing is scary. And so some clients, that's a really appropriate thing to go into and kind of see what the past, was that caused them to have the issues to, again, work with that kind of that inner child that's hurt and that's having these struggles because those are all affecting us now. And in some clients that's not where they're meant to go. They don't want to go there, or it's just not what's going to be helpful. And so kind of intuitively, and also as I've done the work more and more, you get a sense of what a person responds to very fast and then tailor it to like, okay, this style isn't great. This one knocked it out of the park, and so I kind of have to monitor them, get feedback as we go, and then tailor the approach based on how they're responding. So
That makes a lot of sense. When I explain my experience, I always tell people that I don't know what your experience is going to be, but this was my experience. And I will say the regressions were profound. And like what you said too, and none of it is what I expected. I mean, you prepared me for all of this, but I still, I didn't understand until I did it, like how life-changing and profound it really was. Like, we can talk about it all day long, but honestly, try it because it's it's almost like you have to suspend your disbelief. Like, wait a minute, how did I feel like I just went through that much inner work in like an hour? Like, how did you do that?
I know.
That's how it felt when I left. And yeah.
Yeah.
The level of work you do, I think, is important to talk about because, like you've mentioned to me before, doing the suggestive thought and stuff can be helpful, but getting to like the long-term benefits, dealing with the root cause of some of those habits or maybe unhealthy things that we want to overcome makes all the difference in the world. And honestly, for all of our listeners, I'm not even joking when I say that I walked out of our sessions at the end of our 6 sessions that we did a different person than when I started. Not that I didn't still have all of the same beautiful things inside of me. It's like I got to keep all the beautiful things that I've experienced through some of these traumas and get rid of some of the junk that didn't serve me anymore. But I thought I was calm before, but I was like, is this what peace feels like? Because I feel like this is a level of calm I have never achieved before. It was beautiful. So I don't want to take up all your time, but I just want to make sure everybody understands like how absolutely impactful this work really is on just your soul. I mean, really on a deep level.
Yeah.
So.
And thank you. It's why I love what I do, because I never know what I'm walking into when I experience and have new clients. And when I first started, I wanted to have a plan and figure things out and try to kind of guess what the situation was. I had no idea. I mean, I've learned very quickly that I have no idea what I'm going to uncover. And in fact, like even when people do their intakes with me, they say they are working on some things, but then when we actually get into having the further conversations, they're actually here for something very different, but don't feel comfortable disclosing it on an intake. And in part because I have a clinical background and a nurse, people are very, which I honor that, but people are very trusting of the fact that they can come to me with stuff that's very personal. And I've seen everything as a nurse, like nothing phases me. And so it's cool to also have that level of relationship with clients, because if you don't have that, people are not going to feel comfortable with the process as well. It can be a vulnerable process, and you will get into as much as you want with your past or as little. And I don't have control over where people go. And I don't ever try to guide them or steer them in a way that isn't aligned with what they're trying to achieve. Because it's their experience. I don't put in my intention necessarily in terms of a specific outcome as well, because they're going to get from it whatever they're meant to receive.
That's awesome.
So are there people who come in and they're just not a good fit, or they're not ready to step into that process yet? Like, how do you figure that out at the beginning?
Right. On my intake, I do have like a commitment scale, like how ready are you to do the work? And I tell people straight up, I'm very transparent. This is not a quick fix. We're used to Amazon priming everything in our life. We are like, right. I mean, we want to have quick results. We want to have that diet pill that fixes all the problems of the years. We want to have that, bandage thing just to make us feel good fast. And that's not what this process is. Although it is much faster than many other modalities, people still have to be committed to doing the work, because it is a very interactive experience, meaning, I'm doing the hypnotherapy and coaching, but you as a receiver have to be implementing and putting it forth, right? Like if I have someone for smoking, well, it's up to us, that we're getting rid of those cigarettes in that session and making a commitment that, okay, if that little habit brain comes in, you're mildly triggered, which ideally, you really don't have those sensations. But if you are, because we didn't quite hit it, the first time quite perfectly, that, you're not going to run out right away and get cigarettes. You're going to have that pause and do the things that we talked about that are also the conscious mind work. Because I know these things work, and I'm proof of that. My clients are proof of that, but people have to be ready. And I had somebody recently tell me she's not ready to give up her habit that she was there for. And I'm like, well, and so we talked through it, and kind of uncovered the reasons why, which they were all stories, stories that she had about why this was supporting her life. In reality, they were not actually supportive to her experience. And so we were able to kind of bust through some of those myths and beliefs. But at the end of the day, I can't make someone change if they don't want to either. So.
So why hypnotherapy? Like why did you really dive into this path? And
Mhm.
like
Yeah,
I can't imagine this was something that you were just like one day, oh yeah, hypnotherapy, that sounds
right.
awesome. Like there had to be an
Totally.
experience there.
Yeah. Yeah. So a couple reasons. 2020, as I said, was kind of a crazy year for all of us as a frontline worker and nurse. I was in the pandemic. It was very scary. We didn't know what we were dealing with. And I had always dealt since my teen years with anxiety. And there was a moment I was driving to work as a hospice nurse. I felt this just crushing pain on my chest. I couldn't breathe. My world was spinning and I started to hyperventilate. And I'm like, oh my God, like I'm too young for a heart attack. What is happening? And I called a colleague in complete panic and was having a panic attack, my first that I recall, my first legitimate panic attack. And in that moment, I was like, something has to change. I was already medicated on all the things for anxiety. I had done therapy. I had done nutritional response testing. I had done all these homeopathic things. I quit alcohol. I quit gluten. I quit sugar. Nothing was helping. And the doctors basically were like, I don't know, serotonin, you need more serotonin. I'm like, it's not work. This is not the problem. Right.
Yeah.
And so I kind of synchronistically, my sister-in-law had introduced me to a podcast on subconscious reprogramming. And I was like, oh, what is that? What's hypnotherapy? And so through that, I was like, this is the one thing I haven't tried. There's something to this. So I started to dive in more onto what subconscious programming means, what the subconscious mind is, how we talk to ourselves. And I had realized I had done this to myself, like without knowing it, right? I had perpetuated the experience of anxiety because I just expected it every day. And the thoughts that I had, I didn't have control of. Now I do, but I didn't realize how much they were perpetuating the stress in my life versus, just kind of pausing and shifting my attention. I would indulge in these stories and these beliefs about worst case scenarios and, all these things that were classic anxiety. And so in that process was able to wean down on the medications, reprogram my mind, after doing hypnotherapy and the subconscious work with a coach as well. And it was the most profoundly transformational experience. And I was like, we need to talk about this for people because there are so many people like me who are good-hearted people who are struggling, who don't understand that there's a different alternative. And there are so many good services out there that help people in holistic modalities, um, and medications that are necessary at points, of course. But I had hit my wall. Nothing else was helping. And so I was like, people need to know because there are a lot of people that are turning to more holistic modalities and other ways of not only taking care of anxiety, but really leveling up in life and wanting to have more and experience a better existence with purpose. And then I also, just on a side note, had witnessed in healthcare too that my patients would have sometimes the worst diseases but then thrive. And then I would have patients that had mild diseases, granted they were terminal, that would crash and burn. And as I started to observe things, I knew early in my career that something else was going on there. And so as the pieces came together with my own journey, I was like, oh my gosh, it's their internal narrative. It's how they're thinking about their disease. It's how they're processing this experience that's perpetuating whether they fail quickly or whether they're thriving. And so it was all within, a lot of it was within the mindset as well. That was so profoundly clear as I started to have my own experience. I was like, why isn't the medical system talking about this too? Because you have this doctor telling you you're terminal. Well, you start to buy into that and you're going to crash and burn there. We've seen this demonstrated in healthcare and in the placebo effect and all of these different things that our bodies follow our thoughts. The cues that are given within our thoughts create chemical reactions and all these experiences that actually manifest in our body. And that's not woo, that's legit science
Yeah.
for the people that are skeptical, right? so
Yeah.
so, I'm like, this needs to also be discussed because you have a doctor giving all of these things. I had a client last night. The doctor was talking about some potential issues for his malehood, right? And it was very benign things and could be cancer, and just like kept going. And it's like, whoa, you can't just throw that word around for people, right? And like have it be casual because that's very scary. And as a doctor
Yeah.
talking to a patient, your words carry a lot of weight. And so I was kind of wanting to take on the medical system for a while there and really help doctors understand how to speak with patients, but quickly realized that was not my calling and where I was meant to put my energy.
Mhm.
It just can affect us all. I mean, all of us are affected by our subconscious minds, 100%.
Yeah. Well, everything you were just saying brings up yesterday. I was listening to a different podcast and they were talking about epigenetics
Mm-hmm.
and how it used to be that they thought that cells were structured and they controlled everything. Our genes controlled everything.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're figuring out that your genes don't control everything. Your genes are the
Right.
blueprint. And
Yep.
then our thoughts, our brain, and our environment are what
Mm-hmm.
actually sets everything into motion. And so we
Yeah.
can have these genes that tell us this is what you're going to have, this is what's going to be a problem in your life. But if you don't set the proper environment, you're going to go down one path or another path. It's all about the environment. And they were
Mm-hmm.
talking exactly about that, the mindset and positive thinking. And if you have two people that have the exact same genes and one has a really crap mindset and the other one has all the positivity in the world and has dealt with all their junk, they're going to have completely different health lives
Yeah.
based on the environment that they put themselves in.
And it further goes to prove Dr. Bruce Lipton has a book on it, The Biology of Beliefs. It's
That's who I was listening
profoundly,
to.
it's so cool.
That's
Yeah. And I
awesome.
mean, Joe Dispenza talks about this as well. And I firsthand know people who have cured terminal cancer with only holistic modalities, no chemo, and I'm not a proponent for you do what you need to do, of course, but it goes to show that with the right mindset, the right foods, which we know foods are so critical to healing our body, that we can overcome something even when it feels like maybe we've gone too far down the path of self-destruction, whatever it is, that at any point we have the capacity to change directions. And I'm living proof of that. I mean, I remember being in my car that day thinking, if this doesn't get better, I'm going to die. Like, I can't live like this. And it was so horrific. And I have little kids. Like, it was just awful. And I'm not the only one who's felt like that. But I'm also proof that, like, you could be at that point of just crash and burn and choose to change directions because everything is a choice. And I think responsibility sometimes is coined as a word that's like a negative thing, like, oh, take responsibility, you're responsible. But when we take responsibility, it's the most empowering place to be because you remove yourself from the victim role into someone who has the power and the capacity to do differently. And that is the most incredible place to be.
Yeah, I actually have a video that I recorded on my YouTube channel about responsibility because I used to have this like big weight on my shoulders. I have to be responsible for this and that. And I've learned over the years that it's not this big bad thing. It's our ability to respond when
Yeah.
something's thrown at us.
Yeah.
So it's not like responsibility, it's your ability to move forward. It's your ability to
Yeah.
choose what's healthful for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with everything that you do, helping people reframe and regroup and actually look at what's going on deeper within their system, that
Mm-hmm.
gives them a better ability to respond to whatever life is throwing at them.
Mm-hmm.
We have control over how we respond to things. We don't have a control over who's doing what outside our house. If somebody steals our car, if somebody does this, if somebody does that, we
Yeah.
can't control other people, but our ability to respond and our ability to deal with our own junk, we can certainly control that. And
Mm-hmm.
I am super excited. I know I've seen what's been going on with Tammy since she started working with you. Like I can see the difference in her energy field. I can see the difference in the way she's responding to things. And one of these days, I'm going to start working with you. And I'm so excited about that day because I really do see how you're helping people and the amazing things that you're doing. I
Yeah.
mean, you're partnering with people in their health, and we need more practitioners and we need more people in this world that are willing to do that because it's not always the easiest thing to like help people walk through their shit. I don't know if I'm
Mhm.
supposed to say that word, but I'm gonna like because like really people sometimes they just need a little support. They need to know that somebody's there to
Totally.
walk through it with them.
Totally.
And
And to challenge the belief systems. My coach triggered the heck out of me. But here's the thing, our triggers are our best learning opportunities because when you realize you're triggered, you can then stop and question, okay, what about this is setting me off right now, right? And yeah, am I reacting? Am I responding? And I think we all need someone to be that kind of shining light on our blind spots, because here's the thing, if you don't know what your triggers are, you don't know what your triggers are. You're not
Mm-hmm.
going to know the things until someone assists you in that. And I'm so grateful, even now when I have triggers, um, I pause and I'm like, ooh, what about this is setting me off right now? Am I getting into scarcity mindset? Am I being triggered because I don't feel heard? Am I being triggered because there's so much stimulation and I just need like a quiet second at home? And so when you can be reflective, it just, there's so much power in that pause. And that comes into kind of learning to just slow down and be in the now, which we're not taught that either. And um, we're a very fast-paced country and society where you're chastised for just being. But that's where you have those downloads, that creative inspiration, that
Mm-hmm.
energy, that ability to really level up. And if we don't just be for a little while, we really don't have that ability to receive that guidance and that inner knowing.
Yeah,
That's so
that
true.
made so much sense for me too. Like when you were talking about triggers and stuff, because
Mhm.
that is like one of the biggest takeaways I've had from all of this. It's not like the triggers go away. I mean, you still go out and live your life. You're not like constantly in a hypnotic state,
Right.
but you handle them differently. Like it's just interesting to me how immediately I can assess the situation from a different perspective. Like the emotion of the trigger that would lead me to sometimes unhealthy behaviors um, were they're different. The way I interact with other people, it's different. People that
Yeah.
could previously have been very triggering for me in the way that they communicate, it's just easier to
Hmm.
look at it from a different perspective and not one that feels like a hurt person looking at
Yeah,
it. And
totally. And when you,
it's been really interesting because I mean,
yeah,
I don't know if I shared this in one of the other podcasts, but I started this whole year just entirely sick of everybody's crap, including my own, which I know I've shared with both of you guys. But I didn't quite know what to do. And it's not like I haven't, thought through stuff and done internal work. But I know when I came to you, it was like, I don't know how to get unstuck, but I know what I do know is that I don't know how to take care of myself the same way I take care of everyone else. And I need to figure that out. And that was
totally.
huge because not only was it helping me to deal with the deeper thing that was like, creeping into the other parts of my life, the deeper work that you do, but also it's like, there's probably people who come to you who don't really know that the deeper stuff that they need to connect with, and I'm sure you help them figure that out. So for me, it was like a missing puzzle piece. Finding you and going through it was like a very happy ending to a part of my journey that felt like I didn't quite know how to get past this last little piece of it to get to the next level of
Yeah.
whatever it is that I'm intending on doing. And so it's not like, I mean, what you do is magical, but it's not like, magical in the sense of like you're never going to have hardship again in your life. It's just
Mhm.
you handle it so much better. Like
Yeah.
even people close to me in my life have recognized that even when I have had moments since then where I was like, okay, this feels kind of yucky, being able to sit back and be like, why does this feel this way? And really quickly get into that. And when we don't have those moments of quiet, like you're saying, when we're in this super fast paced society where like every down second of the day, we need to be stimulated with our phones or the
Mhm.
internet or TV or whatever, we don't get time to just peacefully sit there and be like,
Mhm.
okay, let me connect with myself. And having the skill set to be able to not only connect with yourself, but do it quickly that
Right.
you take away from hypnosis is so wonderful. And I think it's going to be so important for society in general because it is a way that you can do this at a pace that feels like you're making progress. Like most people are going to be like, oh, I don't have a half hour a day to sit there and think about nothing, which is not really how it happens, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But this is like you connect with yourself so fast
Yeah.
after you go through this, after you really sit there in your subconscious, after you really, parent your inner children, after you do all of these things that you walked me through. where you're like, wait a minute, I didn't know it could be this much easier.
Yes.
It's really
Well, and
great.
a common thing that I experience too is that I've had a lot of clients say, I don't want to feel that. Like, I don't even want to be there. I don't want to go there. I don't want to feel things. And so they medicate with whether it's alcohol, food, cigarettes, whatever it is. And the thing is like it also becomes like just dipping your toes in the pond of your feelings, knowing you're not going to die. You're not going to
Mm-hmm.
die by feeling the things that you've repressed, but it's doing it in a way that allows your body not to go into fight flight, right? Because when we do that, we trigger a whole sort of, system of issues within your body, and set you on this kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Uh, it just sets like it sets you off in fight flight, and then you're just kind of in defense mode, right? So we also want to help people to connect to their emotions and not be
Mm-hmm.
afraid of like being sad, because that's an indicator of something to pay attention to. That's it. It's a GPS for your internal guidance, and they're there for a good thing. When we hit the stage of depression and just debilitating anxiety, that's the point where you've gone for so long ignoring your emotions that your body's in resignation. And so it's kind of gently peeling the layers back on those things in a way that's safe for a person so they can start to feel their emotion and connect to what it's telling them. And I had a person recently come to me and say, I don't want to feel anything. It just hypnotized me to make my relationship better. I don't, did a ton of inner child work. And the poor person had so much trauma that he was completely in defense mode for years on end. And no wonder he didn't want to connect, because it was scary. And
Mm-hmm.
next to you, which has been so fun, he's probably been the biggest transformation I've witnessed. In terms of energy, walking in just this frantic, scared, just desperate energy to complete peace. Like we had our last session recently, and it was just this giant hug and mess of tears and just beauty, because it was so cool. And not that everybody has to have this big dramatic shift, right? That's not everybody's journey, but it's that, like, in trusting the process and trusting yourself to guide yourself through this, that you can
Mm-hmm.
create that life that, maybe you thought wasn't possible even a month ago. You could step into knowing you've got the power, and you're reconnecting with that potential and following your heart's desire to do big things.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because we had talked earlier, um, and you had mentioned how sometimes you don't always know what other people are asking about or thinking about, because there's a good chance that the things people have asked me about hypnosis aren't necessarily the things that they're asking you about
Yeah.
hypnosis, having shared it. And there has been more than one person that's talked about being really scared about the idea of going back and experiencing
Yeah.
some of these earlier experiences and feelings and stuff like that. And
Totally.
I just told them, well, first of all, kind of like what you touched on earlier, it's never what you think it's going to be. Like the traumas that you know about, that's not really where you go. You're like where I went were things I never would have been able to consciously identify as an issue in my childhood. But I tell them all, I'm like, I promise you, though, it is so much better to know than not to know, which is
Mm-hmm.
like something that Jen and I have talked about before. I remember a long time ago, I was like, I'm really scared of opening a door to something if there's some type of
Yeah.
gifts I have and not being able to close it again. And she's like, well, first of all, you can always close the door. Secondly, once you open it, why would you don't want to anymore?
Totally.
And that's kind of similar. Like, it's so much better knowing. It's so much better knowing. And I think
Mhm.
another thing that I've heard come up is people are confused about how it all works. So I've
Mhm.
tried to kind of explain to people, like, stuff you see on TV where you fall asleep and you wake up thinking something is not really how this goes.
Right.
I'm like, first of all, it's really trippy because I've never in my life experienced my conscious mind and my subconscious mind doing things at the same time. It is crazy, but
Yeah.
very interesting and really cool at the same time. But I was fully aware of everything. So that's the other thing that I think people have a little bit of confusion about is like,
Yeah.
you didn't just put me to sleep. And as a matter of fact, I think you mentioned, you're like, it's my job to make sure you don't fall asleep. We want you to be
Right.
relax, but you need to
Right.
be present.
Yes.
And that there's a few like logistical pieces that I think people are confused about. Do you
Yeah.
want to touch on any of that, kind of explain a little bit of how, some of this
Yeah.
process goes?
Yeah, I think that's a great thing. And it's what I tell all my clients in my consultations is that hypnosis is going to be whatever it is for you. So we always start our sessions with coaching. Where are you at? How are you doing? What are we working on right now? And then we do hypnosis for the second half, which again is geared based on what they're telling me they want to work on. Everyone's experience is different. I have some people say, gosh, I felt like I was just laying in the recliner and you were talking to me. I had another woman say she felt like she was flying in a hammock, just back and forth. It was delightful. And I've had other people say I was experiencing these trippy colors as though it was like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas type, like just all this wild stuff, right? And some people are like, I remember parts of it, not others, but you're there, right? And I've had people fall asleep briefly, and then it's my job to bring them back up, right? We want you comfortable, but not that comfortable. The other thing is hypnosis it involves being in a trance state. Now, when people think of trance, they do tend to think of the watch going back and forth and the woo woo crazy stuff.
Mm.
It's not what it is. We go into trance in and out every day. So if you're driving, maybe to Costco or wherever you shop, and you were listening to a song and you don't know how you got to the store, that's a trance state. If you're sucked into social media and you're scrolling and you're like, oh my God, how did an hour go by? That is a trance state. So these are very normal states of how we operate every day. So when people get freaked out that they're going to be in this altered state, it's not altered. In fact, it's a very normal state that you go in and out of all throughout the day. And so I always tell clients, however it is for you is what you're meant to experience, and not to judge it, and those of us, myself included, who've had monkey minds, who are, very analytical, the mind just swirls, all this craziness. Those thoughts will probably come in for a while until you train the brain just to recenter and focus. And so if you're in hypnosis and you get distracted by a noise, that doesn't interrupt the process. If you notice that your brain's getting a little busy with the grocery list you forgot to create, that's okay. You just bring yourself back and you're receiving on a subconscious level what you need to receive, even if conscious mind is a little bit busy still. And so that's a part of the training the brain that gets better because, again, as someone who was hot mess express with anxiety. I mean, I thought I would never, truly never be cured of
Your
it. Like,
one-liners are the best, by the way. You throw out
you're
these like little
welcome.
gems.
You're welcome. You can use that. But I like legit thought I was going to be suffering with this the rest of my life. I mean, I would wake up with just debilitating anxiety, and I and many people, are living proof that you can rewire the brain, just like someone who's had a stroke, right? You see people that have had strokes that have affected half their brain. Well, through neuroplasticity or rebuilding neural networks, they're able to walk again and retrain their brain to compensate. And so with us, we can retrain our brains to not be in a state of fight, flight, panic all the time, not be in anxiety or not go to the negative all the time. That's just a simple retraining of the brain. And we can train our brain to just slow down and be. And that's still, I mean, I'm still evolving and I learn as much from my clients as they learn from me every time. And so I'm also learning as we're working together about, the things I'm working on too, and just how busy my brain can still be. But now I'm aware of it. It doesn't take control of me like it used to. I can become aware of the things that I used to be unaware of and then shift back into a state that is a lot more suitable. So
Can I take us down a quick woo-woo path
yeah.
before we get close to
Always.
the end?
Yes, I love the woo.
So I'm very curious as somebody who has had trauma in my life because of my woo-woo-ness, because of the things that I see that other people don't see.
Hmm.
The the things that I'm typically in an altered state compared to people that think are normal. I mean, I'm always seeing spirit, I'm always seeing energies, I'm seeing things like that. And that's part of my trauma pattern
Yeah.
is I was dealing with those things before I knew what they were. So for somebody like me, having
Hmm.
somebody else in your energy field, trusting somebody to walk you through this altered state,
Hmm.
um, what does that look like when somebody's experiencing something that you as the practitioner really um I'm I know that you're more woo than a lot of people. So I'm not saying this about you, but for somebody who maybe hasn't had those experiences, how do you help walk people through that and walk through that trauma state if they are reliving things
Yeah.
while they're in their hypnosis state?
Yeah, I mean,
That's a good question.
in a lot of the trainings I've done, whether I've dealt with something or not, there's a lot of my clients I don't relate to in the sense of some of the relationship issues that have come in, I can't relate to that, and gentlemen that come to me with erectile dysfunction, I can't relate to that. Sorry. I don't know what that's
Yeah.
like, but I
Yeah.
have the tools to help because it's not, assuming we've ruled out medical for things, there are tools and ways to walk a person through things that even I may not totally have firsthand experience with myself dealing with. And so it's always a very careful process to make sure that we don't re-trigger somebody too, because there's a thing called abreactions. It's very rare, but people can, when they're in an experience, relive it, and it's so real and terrifying. But there's ways to help protect somebody from that experience, and sometimes you don't know what's going to set them off either. You have
Yeah.
them go to an experience, and you don't know where they're at, and you realize it was a pretty horrible thing, and so there's ways to kind of pull them back, get them calm and safe, and then kind of it becomes very intuitive work too. I don't always, most of the time, I have no idea what I'm about to do with a client until we're in there. And then it's just like, okay, and it becomes almost like a channeling, as it's become more intuitive for me, it almost becomes like, all right, source, God, give me what I need to know or have for this client to serve them at their highest purpose. Right. And I just trust that I'll have the words I need with people. And if I don't, there's the power in the pause on my end too, where it's like, okay, I've done this. This hasn't been, I don't know that I got what I need yet. Cause you feel it, you can kind of feel when you're like, it didn't hit. And then you just, you change your approach even mid session. I've had times where I'm like, ooh, that they're not responding to that. We're shifting gears to something else here. And
Okay.
so to kind of answer your question, there may be things that come up. But there are ways to handle all that. So people stay safe because bottom line, we know that through our mind experiencing something, we're safe, of course, but it's very real and very scary. And if someone's had a traumatic event, let's say rape, okay, I'm not going to make them, if I know that that's a part of their past, I'm not going to ask them to go back there. Okay, if they accidentally go back there because they just need to work something out, we're putting them in like this viewing room where they're like maybe on a balcony kind of watching a movie on a screen or something where they're not in it, but they're an observer only to what they need to observe to work through that. Because I don't think that there's any purpose in having somebody rehash something like that. It really doesn't serve any good. But if their mind takes them there, there's a reason for that. And so that's where I
Yeah.
trust the mind to go where it needs to go to work through whatever it needs to work through. And again, like Tammy said, I have no idea what it is. And it could be something that I'm like, what in the heck? Why are they there? And then you poke around a little more and kind of do some more investigations. And you're like, oh my God, that is why they had to go here and work through this. Okay. So,
Okay. So then staying on the same line of woo.
yeah.
So past life regression is also a
Yeah.
form of hypnosis.
Yep.
When you have people in your room working with you, have you ever had anybody who has shifted into the space of past lives or higher dimensional being life?
Good
How do you
question.
affirm that?
So, I actually have not. I am trained in doing past life regressions, and I've had people approach me, can you do this? And it that they can, we can. I just kind of tell them, I can't guarantee that you're going to regress to a past life because that may not be what you need to do. But a lot of the clients that I see that the experiences that they have to work through are this life. There's some really cool trainings I intend to take on higher self work and kind of soul work that just I think are going to be so powerful for helping, especially those of us that are woo. I think a lot of us look to like, what is my purpose? Why am I here? Not just like, what am I here to do right now, like as a hypnotherapist, but like, what is my purpose? Like big picture, right? And so I really want to be able to help people with that. So, but the majority of issues, and I hate to say are 3D, but they're kind of 3D at this level. I did have somebody, and this for those who, people are here because they're woo, obviously, but for those who don't quite want to go this far, I did have some clients with negative attachments that were a part of their process. And that's something else. I have the tools to deal with that, but that is something that, if I'm kind of stuck, I call on I've got some people that I refer out to say, I think you need to work with this person because this is a little bit beyond my capacity.
So it's interesting that you started talking about that. I live close to a train tracks, and part of my experience has always been that trains come in and they collect the energies that we don't want to hang on to and draw them out and take them away. So you started
Mm.
talking about these attachments and you started talking about negative energies or low vibrational energies coming in. And the train, of course, came in and started honking, honked like that little honk honk, and then it was done. So thank you for bringing that clearing in for all of our listeners. Hopefully Tammy doesn't take that little train noise out of our
I
sound,
don't
but
know that I heard it, but if I
Me
hear it,
neither.
I'll leave it in there.
Wow. I mean, that's really cool. And that's the power of synchronicity and the power of, God's source being like, I got you, you're covered. And I trust that. And I go into all my sessions setting the intention that I will receive what I need to receive to help the person for their highest good. But also, I've learned to shield my own energy because as an empath, like a lot of us are that are in this space and or who are healers, we can get really sucked into other people's experiences that can cause us to have a lot of our own kind of symptoms and physical things come up. So I've had to be very intentional about that so that I can really fully show up for my clients as well. Because when my cup is half empty, I'm not doing them any good either.
yeah, yeah.
I will say that, kind of speaking to what Jen was saying, I know I've mentioned this to you before, Angie, but I do think you operate with a lot of integrity too. Um, I know we've had conversations after a session where you've mentioned that you knew I was somewhere specific, but I wasn't ready to identify it yet, and you just
Mhm.
let that happen. But also, it's like you have a very skillful, like recognizing it after the fact. Of course, I didn't realize it's happening while I was in hypnosis, but that you have a very skillful way of kind of just flowing with whatever's happening, like kind of letting us lead you, and
Mhm.
then you do the same favor in return, if that makes any
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Like leading each other down this whole thing. But I appreciate that don't you don't push. You let things happen the way that they need to happen. So whatever that looks like for everybody else, I I appreciate it because kind of like what Jen said, I have a hard time sometimes trusting people, dabbling in my subconscious.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was nice to have formed a relationship with you prior to that, to really like know and understand who you are as a person and what your intention is, and that you always are true to your intention of just genuinely being able to help people, like you said, live their highest and best lives.
Yeah.
So I very much appreciate that you're able to share this with everybody today.
Thank you. And thank you so much. And you're spot on. I think a huge part of it is trust. I personally, I would
Mm-hmm.
never work with someone who I didn't have that trust with. You have to energetically feel that it's a good match because it's not going to be a good exchange if we don't have that mutual
Right.
experience of I trust you, you trust me, this is a good flow. And I don't want to, we talked earlier about, I don't want to take someone's time or money if I don't feel like I can genuinely help them or that maybe it's not the best fit. There are other people in the area that maybe would be a little bit better or something for what you're looking for. And so, in that respect, I just trust that whoever comes through my door, I'll get that sense and know very quickly if we're aligned or not. And for the most part, that's always worked out. So,
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, you never know, too. Sometimes people aren't quite ready for
mhm.
what we're laying down, and eventually they're like, maybe I need that now.
Right.
So
Yes.
I'm sure there's
Okay.
been a lot of seeds planted that even if people aren't ready, they will be like, I think I need Angie now. Um, so do you want to tell us if there's anything special you'd like to share about yourself, your business, anything you would like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, so you can go ahead if you are interested in this, want to talk more or hear more. I offer free consultations. So feel free to go to my website, which will be in the show notes. It's just
Mm-hmm.
angiekircher.com. And you can sign on for a consultation or shoot me an email or message. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And then I do have some freebies on there as well for more information and little downloads that people may find interesting. So, and I do offer sessions in person to those who are local in Minnesota. And then I also do Zoom for those who are not in the area. And so I currently have clients in Australia, North Carolina, just kind of all over the place. So
Mm-hmm.
I work with people wherever they're at.
Awesome.
Cool.
And we'll make sure to put all that information in the show notes so
Mhm.
everybody can link to the consultation as well as the free, I believe it's a free audio that you're sharing too.
Mhm.
So we'll make sure everybody has access to that.
Great.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today. Like, I am so excited that we got to share this because I have so much respect for you and the work that you do.
Likewise.
And
Thank you.
thank you. And thank you to our listeners for being here today. Remember to subscribe if you want to subscribe. Share this with everybody that you want to, because we want to get this information out to everybody that wants to hear it. And don't forget to check the description, the show notes, to get all of the links that we talked about. And remember, everyone, you are wonderful just the way you are. And that is why they call us Woo.
Bye, everyone.